community aspect of this is probably one of the most exciting things. Having been a hunter my whole life, and then working into this, to be able to speak with people that are just absolutely the most genuine folks you'll ever meet.
Oh,
so,
absolutely! Some of the best people I've ever met have been in this industry.
All right, and we're live. Mr. John, how are you this afternoon?
Very good, very good. How are you, Jason?
I'm not doing too bad. Thanks for joining us. And by the time this launches, we'll be able to formally say that FX is a formal supporter of Airgun Hunting Legion. So we're happy to have you guys and thankful to bring you on.
We're very excited for what you guys are doing. The early looks at the website, because I know things aren't official at the point we're recording, but it looks fantastic. Very excited.
Appreciate that. We got a good group of people behind it. So in your experience over the last couple of years, in this market,
yeah.
And a lot of people have, one of the reasons why we're even launching this is because there seems to be a real desire by the community. Do you get the same sense from the community that they want to see something like this come on?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting because I've been in the industry about 5 years now. I started on the retail side running Airgun Depot, and I've seen things grow, the progression, because it's interesting. I remember getting to Airgun Depot. I grew up shooting, I grew up in northern Utah, so, we know rifles in Utah, obviously. I think half the gun world secretly resides in Utah. Most people don't know, but I had no idea about PCP air guns. I joined over there, took the helm, and I remember I was going through all the different product, and somebody handed me the PCP, and I pulled the trigger on it, and it was like, holy cow, this is completely different. This shouldn't even be called an air gun. And my eyes were open. I knew that this was the future of air gunning, and that, this was a hunting tool that people were really going to be stoked about. And I've really seen it grow since then, and particularly over the last few years as slugs have become quickly developed. Obviously, you got the big bore sides of things and kind of meet in the middle. You got the small bore and big bore kind of meet in the middle, and some nice in betweens. It's absolutely the future of air guns, and I think it's been a natural progression. That's just, the word's getting out every day,
Yeah, I completely agree. And a couple of years ago, I had some brief involvement with air guns. There was 7 states you could hunt deer with, and now as of last week, there's like 21, which is kind of
big change.
It's a huge change. It changes the whole game
in a short period of time too. All things considered, I mean, that's really impressive.
Yeah, like 3 years.
Yeah.
So
I mean, when you talk about government agencies and bureaucracy, I mean, that kind of change is great. And that also is testament to, there's a lot of unsung people out there that are doing a lot of work behind the scenes, because that takes a lot of effort. I know, like Chris Turk, up North Air Gunner, he's up in Michigan area. I know behind the scenes, just hours on hours of doing things. That's just because of love of hunting. No one's paying a lot of these people to do it. It's just they want to be able to hunt with air guns, and it's impressive.
Yeah, that and guys like Mitch King from ASA.
Yeah, Mitch does a great job over at ASA. Yep. Yeah,
taking the
and a lot of the other manufacturers. I know a lot of manufacturers that have that very forward-thinking viewpoint. I mean, the guys over at Crossman Benjamin, I mean, there's been teams over there that have been really grinding for a lot of years, and it's nice. I think as air guns is rapidly growing and expanding, that gives more push and effort and juice to make this happen.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you grew up in Utah and you worked for Airgun Depot for a while, so did you get into, some people get into air guns for different reasons. Did you ever find yourself like on the target shooting side and the competition side, or were you more like just found it as a way to get into hunting?
Great question, because you're right. There are these different avenues for air guns, and I feel like people get into them for one reason, then it kind of blends to the others very quickly, because they all have, I think they're all kind of equally enjoyable in their own rights. Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling a lot of people will justify to their spouses or loved ones that they're getting an air gun for practical reasons, you know, pest control, but it's really to target shoot or, you know, competition.
Right.
And that's great. I got into it, you know, being in the Salt Lake area, it was more about target shooting and then into competition, just because Salt Lake's not what it was 20, 30 years ago. That's a big, big suburban city, sprawling. Obviously, there's the hunting aspect that Utah's known more for, but that's very different. Now that I live in North Carolina, the use of air guns, you know, North Carolina, there's wildlife all around. Not that there isn't in Utah either, but I kind of see the use of, and I live on a piece of land now where it's like, yeah, you know, as a tool for pest control, things like that. I get it. I mean, that's the driving behind air guns, is the tool for, you know, starting at pest control, small game hunting, varmint hunting, all the way up. So I'm more of a target competition guy, but that's just because I have to live here most days.
No, I understand. Take me through that though, because a couple of years ago I attended a match. Absolutely fascinating. You know, watching guys shoot little pellets out to 100 yards even. What have you won any competitions first off, or are you you know, still
Good
climbing the
question.
ladder there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have done 3 competitions now, and I'll happily tell you that my last year was the Pyramid Cup. I got 6th place in the 100-yard bench, which I was pretty proud about. I mean, considering who was there on the line shooting,
Yeah.
I could hold my head high, but it's addictive. I mean, there's something very American about pulling the trigger and hitting a dime 100 yards away. It's so addictive and fun. And I mean, just recently there was a video up by, of all people, Lou Ferrigno, which is, a lot of people may or may not know, he is a avid air gunner. Most people have no idea, but he said it really well. He's like, in this COVID times, he's been shooting all the time because it's that competition, the challenging yourself. And, you know, competition shooting, target shooting, you have that, you're just trying to beat yourself and improve yourself.
Right.
And then you're doing it against other people, and then you have the nerves and that aspect of competition. But it's very addictive. I recommend it to everyone. If you go to a competition, trust me, the first one, it's going to surprise you, and you're not going to do as well as you think you could do, but then you learn, and then you quickly get up to speed, and you learn a lot from the guys shooting around you, because airgunning as a whole, people like to share their tips and tricks. It's not you know, they don't have secrets that they closely guard. It's more about a communal, like, hey, let me show you what I'm doing so you can get better.
Now, the community aspect of this is probably one of the most exciting things, having been a hunter my whole life, and then, you know, working into this, to be able to speak with people that are just absolutely the most genuine folks you'll ever meet.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the best people I've ever met have been in this industry. It's just amazing people.
But as far as like getting in on the hunting side, I almost think it'd be, because there is a learning curve with air guns, it's a graduation. That's the, you know, I talked to Jim Chapman, Eric Henderson, guys like that. And there, it feels like there's this graduation into hunting with an air rifle. And I feel like it might be worth the time investing into shooting at the competition level just to get those fundamentals down. Do you agree on that?
Yeah. Oh, completely agree. Because, you know, if a guy's coming from the firearm world where they grew up maybe hunting, you know, always doing the deer hunt stuff, that's a little bit more straightforward, meaning, especially from a distance standpoint, right? That's one of the big things with air guns. So, you know, if you're out hunting, you have to know your distances, you have to have your dope sheet, your holds, or your dialing, because and I think that's part of the appeal of air guns, is there's a little bit more of a challenge to it, right? You have to know, if I'm hunting rabbit, I have to gauge, oh, that's 70 yards and what's my hold for that, versus if it's 40 yards. And me personally, that's part of the joy of it, because it's not as straightforward, right? So, and that's where target shooting and getting out and pulling the trigger is really going to hone those instincts. Because you see some of these guys, you know, a lot of our pro shooters that a lot of the guys know on YouTube and are seeing them hunt all the time, and they just have it down. They'll see a bird at 120 yards and they don't even have to look. They just know it. And that skill is amazing. But that's all from spending time behind the trigger and going out on a range. The great thing about air guns, you don't have to go to the firearm range. You just get a little piece of land. You can have some fun.
Right. So for yourself, what was one of the biggest challenges in becoming really proficient with an air rifle, that you had to really work at? Let's call it a learning curve, that guys like me coming into it are gonna, you know, you could share that piece of information with?
That's a really cool question. I think for me, it was learning how to use a scope. That's something growing up with just shooting normal rifles. You kind of get your zero and you're good. But like what I was just talking about, that idea of learning how to, whether you want to dial or hold, and learning to read wind and stuff like that. That was the thing that only comes with the reps, I found. So, and that was part of the fun part of doing that. But I find that's the thing that time has to be spent on. And that's something that even competition, you see guys doing out the 100-yard bench press and stuff. They don't necessarily need to how to read the wind and stuff, because you have your sighter targets and you can figure it out. But when you're in a hunting situation, you have to really know those conditions and know how your pellet or slug's going to react.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So talk to me about FX, the brand. You said that, as a brand, it's fairly new to the States. So how did you go from, how did you get into being the lead over there?
Sure. Yeah. It's a good question. It actually probably clears up some rumors that swirl around. Cause I was, obviously FX has been around for 20 something years and has been imported in the US for a long time, but as it's been growing, so I was over at Airgun Depot, the president over there, having a lot of fun, doing great. All of a sudden I found I had to leave Utah for some family reasons. For my oldest son's health, we had to get out of Utah, get to the East Coast where some doctors were. So I was in a weird position where I was having the time of my life. I loved the industry. Loved the guys over at Airgun Depot, had a great crew over there, but had to, I thought, leave the industry. Word got out that I was leaving. And then all of a sudden Frederick over at FX gave me a call and said, what you doing? And I got a good plan for you. And I said, well, as long as you don't mind, we set it up in North Carolina. So that was where the idea of setting up FX USA. And it was, it's been a whirlwind 2.5 years. That was literally, we set that up. He talked to me in summer of 2017. And I remember telling him, like, yeah, we could probably get that set up. Give me like 5-6 months. And he said, no, it needs to be open in November. And it was literally like, I hadn't sold my house in Utah yet. I had to move cross country, find a location, get a staff. And here we are, thriving business, 14 employees, growing like crazy. Things are going really well. But a lot of that's a testament to FX. They gotten to the point where instead of importing through an importer, they needed to have a presence here to keep growing. So we distribute to North and South America, and that's trying to help. There's a lot of dealers coming on. There's a lot of, this industry is growing quickly, and the service side, having the tech support. We're creating a lot of videos, parts, marketing. I see it as my role is similar to when I was at Airgun Depot. When I was at Airgun Depot, and I told you I pulled that first PCP, I'm like, everybody needs to know what a PCP airgun is. Mm-hmm. And most people don't know. If you talk to 100 firearm guys, maybe 1 or 2 of them will know about it. To a similar sense, I'm doing that for FX. Obviously, FX is, I'm not talking about all airguns, I'm talking about FX, but it's the same idea. Let's just get more people into the sport, because most people don't know what they don't know. So I'm still trying to be an ambassador for the sport and grow it and get awareness out there.
Right. Well, one of the, I can completely appreciate your journey there, because the startup life from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from a business standpoint, is not easy. There's a lot of excitement to it, and there's a lot of grinding to it, which is, where we're at right now in the life of building this platform. So I completely understand the stresses and the excitement of building something. Building something is truly rewarding. I know it's not really it's not Airgun specific to talk about business, but it is something.
Yeah, it's very rewarding. What you guys are doing, there's gonna be a lot of hours because there's windows of opportunity and you got to hit it, and there's always so much to do, and your list at the beginning of the day is this long and you can only get this much done, and it's
at the end of the day it's even longer.
Right. But that's part of the fun. That's why I'm sitting on a couch here in my office, because I think the first year there was a lot of time where I just fell asleep here, because like, why go home for a few hours? I'll just catch some sleep and wake up. But it's tough. I saw a picture once. There was a guy on a lion, a butcher, but the question is like, oh cool, like it's like owning a business, like, oh cool, that guy's riding a lion, and the owner's like, holy shit, I'm riding a lion. Like you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So it's absolutely fun. That there's the freedoms of owning your own business, but there's also the chains attached to it, and it's all good. Like, especially in an industry like this where It is a industry where there's a lot of gratitude for what we do, a lot of good feedback. Like I said, amazing people in the industry, great team we have here in North Carolina. So
Right.
it is amazing. And I'm sure you guys will find the same thing with what you're doing. That first year or two, there's a lot of effort going into it, but it's very rewarding.
Right. No, absolutely. I think it will be rewarding. It's getting through those first couple of hurdles without flinching, because
Sure.
you flinch and you tuck your tail and run, you're missing out on some great things. And it takes 3 years to really build something and hit that. You start maturing, and then people. Somebody said to me, the first $100,000 is a whole lot harder than the first million. I said, I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Yep.
Yeah. So talking about the product line for FX though. So I know some manufacturers are, have a specialty and a niche,
Sure.
caliber size and a purpose. What I'm trying to get to is a purpose. Obviously, you're always trying to grow and develop different purposes in your products. But so where do you guys kind of fit in that mix?
Yeah, great question. So FX has really always prided itself on, well, we're always trying to innovate. We're the ones always tinkering. Is there a better way to build something? Is there a different way? It's crazy how many of the innovations in the airgun world have come about because of one man, which is Frederick Axelson. I mean, the hand pump, some of these different things that he's done. And I only say that that's our mindset. We're always about how can we do things different, better, and all in the quest for accuracy. For us, it's all about precision, accuracy, having the best accuracy possible. And to that, historically, we've really kind of stuck more to the pellet side of things, because you have other manufacturers that, the big bore side of things coming from the opposite end, where, big chunks of lead that it's sometimes almost mortar shelling in with a lot of power. And I think there's a sweet spot, because like I was saying earlier, it's like you got the pellet side of accuracy and you got huge, power, foot pounds, and there's kind of that meeting point that I'm seeing in the industry. Because even FX, a couple of years ago, Frederick and us over here, it didn't look like we were really going into bigger calibers than 30 cal. Because for us, if we couldn't get that sub MOA, that's our brand and that's what we're known for. So though, for a hunting application, you have a gun that's maybe like a 2-inch group, that's fine for hunting, but that would be a problem with the brand of FX. But as we kept developing things, we've added 35 caliber, because we were able to get it. We were able to get that sub MOA out to 100 yards. And then particularly we kind of dragged Frederick into the slug market a little bit, in the sense that he was always more pellets because the accuracy, but we work very closely with Matt Dubber, or Air Arms Hunting SA, and he was a big proponent of slugs early on. I remember we had some early conversations, and I could see the juice there too. I could see the need, the desire, because of the BCs for reaching out further, because that's another very American thing. That hitting the dime at 100 yards is awesome, but what if I could get to 150 or 200? And so slugs were providing that, and then the technology and some of the things have come along there, where the slug accuracy is catching up as well. I mean, I would say if you're shooting under 100 or under, I think the pellets still has it on the accuracy. But if you're trying to reach out past 100, that's where slugs get really interesting. I mean, depending on the game, of course, right? But I'm just thinking more of the smaller caliber range.
So what's some of the keys, if you can speak to this, like some of the keys to airgun accuracy that you guys really focus on in the designs? Because I know that sometimes it's always harder, right? To really nail in on accuracy, and that's something that's historically been something that manufacturers are always working on.
Always chasing, right?
How do you what are some of the keys that you guys really stand on when you're building?
Yeah, so the variables are pretty simple. Well, it sounds simple. I mean, there's not that many variables. It's the projectile is a huge part of it, and that's part of the reason when we're talking slugs, that consistency. If you're talking cast slugs, it's never going to get accuracy of swage. You need that consistency, because there's only so much forgiveness. That's pellets have more forgiveness because it shapes the barrel. So you got the projectile, but then it's really about the barrel itself, which with FX we've created our own barrel many years ago, with its own proprietary way of doing it. It's interesting how that came about. We way back in the day, FX, much like a lot of the industry, was ordering Lothar Walther barrels or some of these common things. And the consistency of those barrels, you get 10 and 6 were probably great. One was amazing, and then 2 or 3 were junk. And you kind of had this weird kind of, well, what do you do with the good ones? What do you do with the bad ones? What do you do with the middle of the road? And then the bottleneck of, if all of a sudden the firearm industry needs more barrels, understandably, Lothar Walther is probably going to focus on their bread and butter than the small little niche industry, right? So Frederick basically said, "Oh, let me make a barrel, and then like anything, how can we make it barrel?" So that's where we created the smooth twist barrels. It was just a matter of having that under our control and having the consistency, so that you don't have to barrel shop necessarily, right? Because you've heard about that, firearms and air guns for years. It's like, oh, I got a good barrel, right? We're trying to make it where every barrel is a good barrel, and a lot of people don't realize this, but when some of our guys come over to competitions, they don't fly with their own guns. Like, some of the guys overseas, they can't fly over with an air gun. We literally just a week before go to our shelf, take the guns off the shelf, and they shoot them. And that kind of goes to our confidence of our barrels are that consistent. So the barrel has a huge part of it. And then the power leading up to it, meaning that's where you see a lot of talks about regulators and hammers, and why people are obsessed with chronographs and shooting their gun over and seeing the shot strings. It's that that pressure behind it. If there's some consistency in there, then you can count on it being the same every time. If it fluctuates, the days before regulators and stuff, it was hard to get, as you shot, you had a curve, right? Versus with the regulator, you can really get some consistency there. And obviously there's other aspects that go into that as well, but those are the big ones. And that sounds simple, but then it's the fine tuning and getting better. And how do you make a better regulator? And how do you improve how the hammer hits and the relationship of the valve, and all these different things? That's the quest that goes on.
Right. So on the hunting side of things, you said that your biggest gun is 35 caliber.
Yep.
Okay. So, and if you guys had any people, actually, no, a couple of weeks ago, you told me that you've had some of your pro staff guys taking larger game with caliber. What have your guys been successful so far in hunting?
Yeah, we've had a couple of our guys use that 35 on hog, really successfully. It's interesting with hog. An interesting thing is we actually recommend pellets over slugs for hog. For hog hunting, a lot of times you want to hit the soft spot on the hog, but because they have those thick skulls, the idea is, we have you want a really a solid slug. You don't want one of those deep hollow points, because sometimes those things will bounce off their skulls, right? And It's all about humane hunting. So I know a few weeks ago, Rick Ream, his handle is Shooter 1721. Yeah. He had a big old hog turn, and it'll be some forthcoming video that was filmed, but big hog turn, and it was charging, and he hit it square between the eyes with the pellet, and it went through and dropped him in its tracks. So having some good success with hog.
What caliber was that, with the 35?
Yeah, that's with the 35. And we've had guys take hog with 30, and to a certain degree, I always try to err. You'd rather have a little more power than what you need.
Sure.
I have no doubt that there's going to be people that might be doing smaller deer. Who am I to say? That gets to the gray area of what you should or shouldn't use for hunting. It's always about, you want to make sure you take things humanely. I think that 35 is a great hog gun and down. And maybe some of the smaller deer, but people should be careful. You always want to take game humanely.
So are there a lot of hogs in North Carolina?
There's North Carolina, South Carolina. There's not quite the problems like you get in down south. Like, I know we were visiting a dealer in Louisiana, in the middle of Louisiana, and oh my goodness, the problems they're having with hogs. So he was all excited because he's like, oh, get an impact, get a night vision scope, go out and just, and so the great thing about air guns, especially with problems like that, is you can take multiple games without scaring them off, right?
Right.
So there's some, like I know Texas, Louisiana, some of those places where they have some serious hog problems, where there's the feral hogs are going crazy. Yeah,
one of my good friends who works over at Pulsar, the thermal scope company, was talking a couple of weeks ago. He's actually the guy that got me into the industry. He was telling me about hunting with PCP rifles for hogs, because that's kind of his specialty is hogs, and hunting them at night with the thermal, and how much more effective it can be especially trying to hit, more than one and not spook the whole herd out. And so I think there's an entire, and that's one of the things we're going to try to do with the Heavy Hog Club as we launch here, and you get your patch for the certain weight class. The certain weight class for hog is encouraging people to use to graduate into using big bore air rifles to take these, because it is effective. So let me, what else was I going to ask you?
I will say one of the cool things, I think one of the things that FX is trying to do, because you're asking about our role and kind of the industry and what we're offering, is we're trying to provide those guns where it's kind of that tweener zone. We want to be able to provide it so you can target shoot or small game hunt or pest with smaller calibers, but then be able to power up very easily. Instead of one gun that only does one thing, it has this range of power. In fact, one of our techs, a lot of people know, Ernest Rowe, he took that 35 impact and then swapped barrel kits, tuned it all the way down to 177 and anywhere in between. It's great. That versatility, so that depending on the use, you got a gun that can really be a really versatile tool. That's one of the things we're trying to do. Is it's not something you only pull out every couple of times a year, but it's something that's depending on the season and what you're doing. We've got squirrel season coming up around the corner. I know a lot of guys are getting ready for that. You have all these different seasons, and different calibers are better for different seasons. So
you swap the barrel on it.
Yeah, you can take out the barrel kit, and within a minute, and that's the idea. All the FX guns, you can tune them, adjust their power on them. So, because, way back in the day, most manufacturers are doing this now, but back in the day, they'd have a gun where they build a power plant in the valving, and they'd offer it in 177, 22, and 25, but it'd be the same valving. So if you bought like a 25 cal, it'd be an underpowered 25, because the problem is, you need more air and different valving and hammer hit on it, but you had no way of tuning that. So that's the idea. You have to have that versatility. Like, if you're doing bird pesting and stuff, 22 caliber is amazing for that, especially some of these heavier slugs. But then, all of a sudden you want to go take the hog or do some small game pesting. You have to be able to swap things. And most manufacturers are catching up on that. FX has been doing that for, 5-6 years. That's kind of been one of our big things is, I'm going to sell you one gun, but you can have different barrels. And even within the barrel, you can swap out the liners. What a liner is, it's basically the insert of the barrel, because a slug wants a faster twist rate than a pellet. So we try to have that versatility where you can swap and change the gun and tailor it.
Gotcha.
It's kind of the deep end of air guns, where once you get your head around it, it's awesome. But when people first get into some of these guns, they're like,
well, and that's the one thing that is very interesting, is how much you can tweak and adjust these implements. It's unlike, you kind of get that sense with, if you're in muzzle loading or if you're doing your own reloading on
powder loading, your powder.
But this just seems, and again, I'm probably, when I talked to Jim Chapman yesterday, I'm like, I'm definitely a hunter, right? So it's a whole learning curve. That's going to be my learning curve in this, is learning the micro details. But I'm into archery, so I get, that's
some similar
probably
things.
An easier transition at some level. But
I'd say similar to archery, I think part of the fun is that idea that the hunting, you kind of have to stalk your game. You have to get closer than firearms. And I think that's part of the fun and challenge as well, that you kind of have to have some skills and know what you're doing, right? So I think that's part of the appeal as well.
Well, and it kind of goes back to the idea of, this isn't a graduation, level at some point. When you have the skills built up, a resume built up, you're comfortable in the field to go from a center fire or a muzzleloader or even archery equipment. The rules of hunting don't change.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing that I've told some of the folks, that when I told them, my inner circle, when I told them I was involved with this project, they looked at me, I said, look, the rules of hunting aren't going to change. we have to learn. Eric Henderson was telling me about how temperamental airguns are in cold weather, and how to handle a gun in cold weather, and what to do. But again, that getting close, getting tight, it still doesn't change. I grew up hunting with a shotgun, like a smoothbore shotgun.
Wow.
At 60, my max range was 60 yards. Actually, that buck right there was a smoothbore slugger.
Wow,
and
that's cool.
No, my dad's childhood gun is a very special gun. But that same concept, when I thought about all of this, it really feels like I'm going back to those level of skills and trying to set up if I'm deer hunting for that 60 yard and under shot. That's probably would be my most comfortable, out the gate, if you will. But I know some guys are really honed into much further distances. I'm glad you said that though, because you're right. The hunting doesn't change just because of the implement, and I think that's
Yeah.
if this becomes more mainstream and people understand that. I think that's part of the. I think that prejudice will go away. Don't you think?
Yeah, it's just knowledge. I mean, it's interesting. The thing going against air guns the most is the term air gun. You tell it to people are thinking little pumper, Red Rider kind of thing, right? At the same time, it's kind of nice because maybe that's why we're not as heavily regulated as other industries, right?
Yeah.
So it's a tool, right? Mm-hmm. And what's cool is when people get their head wrapped around it, they understand that it's not replacing a firearm necessarily. It's a different situational tool for hunting, or like I said, challenge kind of standpoint. I know there's a lot of guys that are excited for deer season because anyone can go get a deer with a firearm, but how many people are getting it with an air gun, right? There's kind of some fun and challenge and a little bit of swag in your step. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of emotion with hunting. I mean, this is something that's part of our DNA and our culture. I mean, you were just mentioning it yourself. You're talking about the gun your dad was using. There's a lot of, you think fondly of it. There's so much, guns are such a integral part of our history. I know for myself, some of my fondest memories were thinking I go see my grandparents every summer up in Boise, Idaho, and there was a 22 handgun that I just fell in love with that was passed on from my grandpa. And it's like the emotional tie to my grandpa, who, man, love my grandpa. He was a stud, and he passed about 5 years ago, but that connection's there. It's hunting rifles, like I said, that's why it's such an American thing. It's such a great thing. It's real too. It's tangible. It's kinetic. It's not, I love that when I'm hearing about young people going out shooting air guns, that's what I did growing up in my backyard. I didn't have video games and stuff. I went and shot army men in the backyard and had a blast and could do that for hours on end. And it was a really kinetic experience where it's out in nature doing things, learning about the world. It's nothing. No, I spend my fair share of time in front of the TV or games or something like that, but it doesn't do what a kinetic experience like shooting or hunting will do to you.
Right. Well, it is deeply, like I said, it is an American experience. I mean, it's hunting all around the world. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But that there's something unique about having a gun that's passed down, and it's those little elements. It's kind of fun. Those little elements of a hunting experience that don't get taught. It's hard to even. As we talk about look at the big picture of where hunting is at, and especially hunting media, and talking about how we tell that story, that's such a hard story to tell about passing on. It's a small part of the story, but passing on, whether it's a gun or, it's usually based around guns, but telling how much that stuff means to us. Going to the camp, going to the cabin, that drive down the camp, that doesn't get talked about as much. I mean, I know the best conversations I ever had with my dad was just driving to the camp as a teenager.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. It's like one of those things where maybe life slowed down because you and your pops, your grandpa were doing something, and it's like one of those just memories that sticks, and it means so much, right? Yeah. And I guarantee you, all these guys you see online, the YouTubers, the influencers, guarantee they all have some old gun that's been passed on or something that has some real meaning to it and a story to it behind that even drove to where they are today. Because you see the guys that are shooting all the time, and I mean, filming a hunt and putting it online, that is a labor of love, because that is not easy to do. And it comes from a drive, right? It comes from there's something they really get out of it and wanting to share that with others.
Oh man, filming hunting. I talked to Jim about that a little bit, and I talked to Ryan Gresham over at Gun Talk Radio. And we were joking with each other because it's like, yeah, when you go to film a hunt, you're filming first, hunting second.
Yeah, it is. Have you done so much more stressful than just like we're going down. We're doing some stuff with the guys down at IREC Veteran 8888. And a lot of times we'll do kind of the review kind of stuff. That's easy, but filming a hunt, that's like 10 times the effort, and it's satisfying. But there's all these variables, and yeah, like you said, you're first and foremost being there to film stuff, and then, oh, by the way, have your shit together to to hunt too.
Oh man, have you been on camera hunting before?
Behind the scenes.
Behind the-
Well, actually, I did one recently, and was doing has some good guys in Puerto Rico. We're doing iguana hunting because I'm telling you, if you want to go for a vacation, go to Puerto Rico where the missus will be happy because it's Puerto Rico. It's beautiful, but
Yeah.
there's so much iguana hunting, and there's a huge need down there. Those iguanas need to be cold. Compared to Florida, they're monsters in size. And so yeah, I had my side shot and stuff like that, and it was a whole other level of just working and getting the shots right, and worried about hit and record and then get the shot and pressure.
Right. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. I maybe I don't know if you can speak to this, but like I remember seeing an article in I think Outdoor Life years ago on iguana hunting in Puerto Rico with air guns. Do you know like why or how that got started? Like as a destination, because there's not like there's a whole lot of destination things for airgun hunting. I mean, I think that we can help build those through the platform. That's something in that in the tradition sense, like we're just talking about. I think we can accomplish. But how did Puerto Rico and air guns and iguanas all become synonymous? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, it's a good question. From because there's a group down there, iguana hunters, Abner and Raphael, that I've gotten to be friends with, and first of all, there's the need, right? Because the iguanas are out of control there, and there's a lot of farming in Puerto Rico, and it'll decimate crops. It'll cost these farmers a lot of money, and keeping in mind a place like Puerto Rico, it's not like it's a thriving state economy. They get hammered by hurricanes and stuff. So it's in general the what people are living off in Puerto Rico is a lot less than stateside. So I think it's just kind of grown where these farmers have really needed that, and air guns is kind of the go-to for all the reasons of you're just shooting iguana. You don't need to worry about the farm next door, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
And then you got the destination of Puerto Rico. I mean, beaches, sun, great weather year round. One of the biggest cruise ports is in Puerto Rico. So I think it's kind of those combinations, and you get the advantage of, well, I'm traveling. I feel like I'm traveling to somewhere exotic, but I'm still in the United States, since it's a region. So you got a lot of things coming together, and you're right though. It's like, why has that grown so quickly? Because it has kind of turned into a destination place unofficially, and it keeps getting more and more well known as a go-to place.
Right. Well, one of the things that I know I talked about it with you for a little bit was trying to build some of these experiences, and I think building an experience for the membership. I think doing that might be, I know that would be a popular.
Oh, it's a blast. It's something where I took my wife doing it. And, it's interesting because, as with what you hunt, if they look cute and furry, a lot of people, I don't want to hunt, even though there's a huge need. But iguanas, it's almost universally like, yeah, I have no problem hunting the iguana. So it's something that you can really take the family and do. And it's a great way, especially with iguana. One of the biggest things with hunting is education. People don't realize that there's a need, and how much hunting and the right animal, the right season, all these things can really help the environment, the people. It's not this, it serves a purpose, right? And I feel like iguanas is an easy story to show and tell, and where it starts clicking for people, and then that expands to other game as they start to understand the role that hunting plays, let alone the idea if you're hunting to put food on the table and things like that.
Right. So on the big game side, what's your personal favorite animal to hunt? Just in general.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, my favorite right now is the iguanas. Maybe it's just because that's the more recent one, and now that I live, because we have one of our YouTubers. His name's David from Casa de Pesca. He's some people know him. He's purely Spanish speaking, but he just moved down to Florida, and he's going crazy with iguana hunting and stuff. So that's kind of the fun one. And then we're doing some stuff where we're doing some tilapia and other kind of fish hunting with an air gun. It's a little project in the works. So.
Ooh. Well,
so there's some from a boat, and like an arrow with a little retrieval system, and reel it in. So,
oh man,
there's some stuff we're playing around with that's going to be sweet.
That's cool. Well, one of the things too, I know that there's a couple of states that allow you to hunt turkeys with their rifles. My home state of New York is not one of them. But I think on the East Coast, I think Virginia and Michigan, you can hunt turkeys with. Um,
That
and
would be cool.
that, yeah,
I've actually I had many people tell me that hunting turkeys is like their favorite thing. That's their favorite hunting.
okay.
And yeah, and that like I know yeah, my buddy Dave, he'll go and do, you know, the can't remember, I think there's 4 different types of turkeys,
Yeah,
and
the
they get
Grand
all of
Slam.
them and kind of get the, yeah, I've heard that's a blast.
No, the Grand Slam. Someday I will do the Grand Slam.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Um, I know that Jim was telling me yesterday that out in California is kind of a destination, another one of those destinations for air gunning that
Yeah.
doesn't get talked about because they were actually one of the first states that allowed you to hunt turkeys with an air rifle way before anyone else ever like
Oh, cool.
do that. And so one of the experiences I want to build is like Napa Valley turkey hunting and wine tasting.
Nice. Nice.
So we'll see. I mean, we got a long way to go before we can start dreaming too big, but
Well, obviously that's the part of your site that I'm excited about. I mean, getting the word about what you can hunt, where,
yeah,
and especially as that's growing. I know like ASA is doing a great job. Some different retailers posting that, but trying to get the word out to educate people, and that will just further expand it, because the word gets out. The fish and game wildlife are looking at stuff, you know, starting to get their head wrapped around it, and it'll keep changing like it has been.
yeah. No, and the one thing that Mitch told me that is always an interesting challenge is when somebody does sit down with a state wildlife agency and they ask them, well, how many people are into this? How many people want this? I've been
Mm,
on that side of the table too, where you sit there and go, well, I'm going to get, you have to think on your feet a little more. I'm hoping that this is able to show some real quantifiable results,
right.
that we can draw the masses together as a community, because it does seem like there's a very committed community into this, whether
Yeah.
you're big game or small game. And so to be able to provide that, that support to Mitch as he goes in, because that's not the most fun game dealing with state agencies.
Yeah.
It's not, but
Yeah.
um,
You kind of have to wear them down, just, you know, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of time spent, and you're right. I mean, as an industry, I know we have good relationships with Mitch, where it's, you know, sharing the data, showing, hey, here's what's selling, so that there's ammo, so to speak, of going into these meetings and saying, here's the realities, because
right.
it's like anything, you don't know what you don't know. So, you know, having these figures so that people understand, and it's interesting. Usually, you'll expose someone to an air gun, and then it's almost like right away they start noticing it here and there.
Yeah.
It's happening more and more, and we have a lot of firearm stores calling us all the time lately, because it's starting to permeate. You know, this year it's weird with the COVID outbreak. It's actually helped the airgun side of things, in the sense that I think you had a lot of people at home, a little bit bored, watching a lot of YouTube videos, whatever, and
Yeah.
maybe instead of traveling and vacationing, it's like, oh, maybe I'll try this airgun thing. So there's a lot of new blood into airgunning that I'm sure going to be finding your site, and it's kind of like the next level's there, which is great. Let's build from it. Let's make sure everybody that's new to the sport has great experience. We educate them, help them out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're really excited to have you guys come on board and really build a strong relationship with you guys. And I
Yeah.
thank you for being the first to step up to the plate, and join us and help us. So I'm really looking forward to this going forward. And I'm sure that, I can't wait to actually be able to share camp with you and your guys. And
Yeah, it'll be fun. I know a lot of our shooters are very stoked with what you guys are doing, and we'll definitely want to be contributing and helping out, because it's great. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's exciting to see what you guys are going to do over these next couple of years through that 2-3 year growing phase, right?
yeah, that's right. That's right. You gotta make it to that point. So every day, a good friend of mine said, every day you're in the crucible, just got to keep fighting. So
Yeah, there's a lot that you learn a lot through this. So I'm excited for you guys in all the right ways. There'll be a lot of long days, but it'll be a lot of rewarding days. And I know the airgun community is going to really support and be there and have your backs, and that'll help fuel when the energy's running low.
We'll end with that. Tell them where they can find you and your and the company.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're FX Airguns USA. There's a website, fxairguns-usa.com. But, you know, we just service to dealers. So it's really, we have a dealer locator on our website. But for the most part, we're just there supporting all the dealers, North America, obviously we're a worldwide company, and yeah, type in FX Airguns, you'll find it. You'll find a place. It's not hard to find us.
I'm sure people are probably very familiar with the brand. So yeah, check out FX Airguns, guys. We can't thank them enough for their support. And if you are wanting to become a member, go to airgunhuntinglegion.com. Join us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, where you can see not just this video cast, but all of the video casts that we're doing. We have quite a bit of content coming to you guys. So thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks again to FX, and we will see you guys next time. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.